So in the utopian way, it smacks down patriarchy.
Amazing.
Flip it over.
And now you can go very hard and loud. You guys might notice that we are in a different spot. That's because the other place we normally record is getting renovated. But we'll get into a more cozy setting soon. But it's not about the setting, it's about the company we keep. And today's company is
Deniz Agbaba.
Deniz Agbaba. Who are you and from which organization are you?
Well, actually, my name is Deniz Agbaba and I'm a human rights activist. I'm born in Belgium, but I'm from Kurdish and a little bit of Armenian descent. And And the Save Istanbul Convention is actually a platform and up so far a collective from Kurdish and Turkish feminists. We started to work together on Saturday, the 20th of March. And it was very spontaneously because in the night from 19 to 20 March, Erdogan, the president of Turkey, decided to withdraw Turkey from the Istanbul Convention. And my friend Özgecan, she called me up and she was like, we really need to do something. And I was like, okay, then let's go to the city center. And then we just called around and we did some SMS through WhatsApp to people we know. And then suddenly we were there at Place de la Monnaie, and then we looked at each other. So I'm Kurdish and Özgecan is Turkish, and we are used to work together. But then suddenly we saw this Turkish and Kurdish feminists doing this action together, and we were like, wow, this has never been done. Let's keep that dynamic. And the evening itself, we had a Zoom meeting, and then we created a Facebook group. We already did 2 other actions, and we're planning up for more.
Oh, nice. And your collective is called Save the Istanbul Convention. What is the Istanbul Convention?
Well, actually, the Istanbul Convention is a treaty created in the Council of Europe, and it combats violence and domestic violence against women through measures aimed at prevention, protecting victims, and prosecuting the perpetrators. And especially that third part is really, it's the first time that there is this, that there is a law that you can put in place to persecute perpetrators. It recognizes violence against women as human rights violations, and it also aims to bring a change in society by accepting that there is violence, by asking actually men and boys as key actors to act as key actors in changing that process. And the treaty also has very specific objectives. It protects victims from violence. It also calls on education and awareness raising. It also improved the skills of NGO and civil society actors, and it also helps professionals who are active in the field.
So it's not just a specific law. It's a broad campaign to address, or it was a broad campaign, a broad incentive to address the problem of violence against women.
As well, and especially when you look at it worldwide, every country has its own way of tackling violence against women. There's not a uniform law. There's not a uniform way of how people can report to the police. There's not a uniform way how police register. There's not a uniform way how civil society helps to raise awareness or to help women. So this is the first time that you have like this, but it's not the first treaty, because you have other treaties from the United Nations calling on violence against women. You have a treaty concerning femicide, but this is really the violence and domestic violence. And
Turkey is withdrawing from this convention. What is the context in Turkey? What are the numbers for violence against women? How is the country in that sense?
Well, there's a lot of violence against women. Just when we take the case of femicide, for example, there are no official numbers, but it's estimated that has been already in between January and now more than 80 cases. And I think since the withdrawal of the treaty, there are already 10 cases reported, and these are just killing. This is just murdering women. Last year, there's an estimation of more than 300 cases in Turkey. And this doesn't even talk about violence or domestic violence.
That's murder. That's
yeah,
femicide.
exactly. That's killing a woman because she's a woman.
How does this compare to Belgium, to put that in perspective?
Well, we say that in Belgium, I think up until now we have around 7 cases of femicide. But like I said, it's not registered. It's not registered. So you see like headliners in newspapers saying another family drama, a passionate killing. There's no passion in killing in women.
They don't register it as femicide.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
And even for us as activists, also activists in several countries, we don't have insight on how it is reported.
What do you mean with how it is reported?
Well, it normally when there's a homicide or a murder, there is a police investigation, and then it gets classified. But we don't know on which criteria it will be classified as femicide.
So Turkey is not transparent about that.
But it's not a thing about transparency. I think it's first of all acknowledging femicide as a thing on itself before you can actually develop a methodology,
Yes.
right? A methodology on, okay, how are we going to register it?
On one side, the numbers are very bad. On the other side, Turkey is withdrawing from this. What will the impact of that withdrawal be on Turkish society? You said there was already like another 10 cases of femicide.
Yeah, I think very important to understand. First of all, it's very important to understand why Turkey is withdrawing, and it's not just a thing only against women. In 2016, you had attempted military coup by the Gülenists. And since that moment, journalists, academical staff, environmental activists, and opposition parties have been members of opposition political parties have been in jail. So, and also in the beginning of this year, a huge student protest arose around Boğaziçi University, where Erdogan tried to, but actually he just fired the ancient dean and he just put somebody linked to himself, and it's an appointment of a homophobic dean. So and then now you have the withdrawal of the Turkey from the Istanbul Convention. So actually Turkey is getting more and more conservative, and you see that besides of the rising of conservatism, Turkey has a lot of economical issues. So economically the country goes really bad. Poverty has been flourishing, especially with Corona hitting on top of that. And Erdogan realizes that the elections of 2023 are approaching. So you have the AKP party, but you have even more conservative parties in Turkey, like the Saadet Partisi. And in order to start pleasing that extreme conservative wing as well, he's taking this anti-LGBTQI and anti-women decisions. And that explains why he withdraws from the convention. No, when you look into it in practical terms, well, what does it mean? For example, when you look at protection, the convention foresees the power to the police to remove a perpetrator of domestic violence from his home, or the police now with this treaty can ensure effective and timely investigation of any allegation linked to violence. When we look at the perspective, for example, from the protection, the first one was prosecution, sorry. When we look at the aspect from protection, the treaty foresaw that there would be accessible shelters, women's shelters, who were victim of domestic violence. So as well in the prosecution and in the protection, we really fear that it will have a big negative impact for women in Turkey.
Yeah, do you expect to see these or some of these offenses decriminalized, or just a weakening of, for example, the protection and prosecution? What do you think is going to be the very concrete effect for women when they are victims of violence like that?
But when the police... I think when a police officer is not obliged anymore to investigate every report of crime, and we also have this problem in Belgium, you have a lot of cases of domestic violence that are non-classified. And I personally fear that it would mean that a lot of complaints will not get follow-up, and that would mean that in the long term, women would not even mind to go to the police and report a complaint.
Because it doesn't lead to anything anyway.
Yeah.
And may I interject? Like in the current laws under the Istanbul Convention, is the culture in Turkey changed to women being encouraged to go report their problems to the police? How is it right now or under the Istanbul Convention?
I think it's not only in Turkey. I think you have in every country sociological and demographical contexts, and so when you live in a more rural area, it's always more complicated than live in a more urban area. So in Turkey, when we look at it from a demographical way, also geographically, you have a lot of rural areas where it's still very difficult, and that's why the first part of the convention, the preventing and the obligation to launch campaigns, to raise awareness, and to really work around prevention is so essential.
And to take on what Kenan interjected. How well has the Istanbul Convention been integrated in Turkish policy in Turkey so far? Because we'll get to the other countries in a moment, but in some other countries the treaty has been signed, and but it hasn't really been put into action. There wasn't really anything done with it.
I must acknowledge that I'm a human rights activist, but I don't know. I know that it has been ratified, and ratification of a treaty. A lot of people don't know that, but it just means that you translate the treaty into national law. Now, as I said, I'm a human rights activist, and unfortunately, I don't know at what point which laws they have specifically created to ensure that they respect the treaty.
That's no problem. Last year, Erdogan was already considering withdrawal, but he also faced opposition from within his own party, the AKP party. For example, a few women organizations linked with the party urged him not to withdraw from the agreement. Now he's trying to please this more conservative groups that are rising in Turkish society. Where has the resistance within the AKP gone? Is there still any resistance there? Are they on the streets with the other protesters, or?
I must... Last year was a different situation.
In what sense?
In what sense? Corona was just hitting in the beginning. the economical situation was going bad, but not as bad as it has been now. And also, remember last year there was suddenly this social media campaign because there was a 720-year-old woman called Pınar Gültekin who was like brutally murdered. Her body was set into fire, then she was buried into cement. And it really created a shockwave through the country. So, and you had then that social media campaigning where everyone around the world posted black and white pictures. So I personally think the fact that it was supported internationally to do something about women's rights gave more courage to the more right-wing associations. For now, me personally, I'm not in contact with them, but I try to follow up on Twitter. And for now, I haven't seen them as out loud as last year. Why? I don't know exactly why.
Could it be that, in your personal opinion, you said that the reason why this withdrawal happened was Erdogan's trying to please more conservative parties in Turkey? Why wouldn't he try to please the people who are on not the conservative side? If the AKP is pretending to be the centrist party, why try to please right-wing people instead of going to the people who are shocked and annoyed and human rights activists like yourself? Why would Erdogan try to use this as a political move instead of sticking with the Istanbul Convention and ratifying it and trying to appeal to the people on the right side, not the right, but
he has gone too far.
He has already gone too far.
Since the end of the peace negotiations and the attempted military coup, he put so much people in prison. It's too late to go back.
It's a one-way street.
He chose a direction. He already decided in 2015 to turn right, because we must not forget. I know a lot of people think it's have difficulties to understand why people, especially people of the diaspora, really like Erdogan. So when Erdogan first came up, he came up with this: I want to bring peace to this country. The war has been going on very long, way too long, and he had this famous sentence saying that no mother should cry over her dead child, because you had Kurdish and Turkish women, you had army or...
Sounds like a very peaceful...
Yes, and he was very popular, and also amongst Kurd, and he brought hope. Like even the left wing, even though they did not vote it for him, they were like, this guy is going to change something. And that was around 2010. So he was, and then you have the Istanbul Convention, and everyone was like, wow, this guy, even though he is conservative when it comes to religion, he has this future for Europe, and even the talks with the European Union to join the Union were still going really well, and everyone had their hopes up, but then, little by little, he became more conservative, and then in 2015, when he said stop peace negotiations, people were like, whoa, what happened? And then in 2016, and then it just went down. So you have this, he came there as a savior for the country, and on the same side, we must not forget that he invested a lot in the country, in Turkey. So that means in rural areas, building streets, building hospitals, schools. So people really saw literally a direct change in outside of where they lived, that Erdogan was in power and it was going to be a new Turkey. So when it goes well for years and then suddenly it takes this 180-degree turn, it confuses people, and people are like, no, it's not possible. He was there for peace. And also, we are talking about women's rights. I really want to say this. because I think it's important. I'm a human rights activist. So, for example, I am here also in Belgium protesting that women can choose deliberately if they want to wear a headscarf or not. Before Erdogan was in power, women who were young girls, students who wore a headscarf were not allowed into university. They were not allowed to work in administrative functions. So Erdogan also changed that. So I also understand that for women at the beginning, he was like really progressive when it came to women's rights, because he left a choice to women on like basic fundamental, what I consider fundamental rights. So when you add that all up, it becomes more clear why Erdogan is so popular and why then suddenly it's so difficult also for people who voted for him to take a step back. It is going back. Now he would not win the elections, but it takes time to go from hope to say, okay, it's a lost hope. Let's turn
It's been a long development.
Exactly, for more than 10 years now.
Talking about the people that are stepping back and protesting this decision, who are they? Who was protesting in the streets? You said we came spontaneously together in Belgium, both Turkish and Kurdish women. Is that the case in Turkey as well? Is it a homogeneous group? Who is on the streets there?
Like everyone in big cities, but like even in small city centers like Sparta and stuff like that, they were like suddenly standing on the street, and it was really beautiful to see. So, of course, in the more Kurdish areas, only Kurdish women, more Turkish areas, only Turkish women, but in the big cities, it's mixed. And also, we must not forget, we have also other ethnicities. For example, we have Armenians, we have Azeris, we have people living around the Black Sea. So we have a lot of ethnical groups, women with ethnical backgrounds, and they are all in the streets.
Is it just women, or are you seeing a broad support in Turkey for women's rights and the Istanbul Convention?
Yes, but of course the left-wing men also support the gays, and also LGBTQI, because the treaty was also really important for them.
I want to touch upon the link with the LGBTQ movement in a moment, but first, and the last part on the treaty itself, or on the withdrawal.
Yeah.
The opposition in Turkey is saying Erdogan doesn't have the power with a presidential decree to withdraw from the treaty. It's up to parliament. Of course, his party claims the opposite, that he has the power to do so. Are there any chances of this withdrawal still being stopped by something like a constitutional court or something, or is it basically a done deal?
I must admit, I don't know exactly how Parliament can stop it, but what do you see, for example, and that worries me, is that you can have a Parliament, but when you tackle down the whole opposition, you will be alone in Parliament. And now the 26th of November, there is a big possibility that the HDP, the Halk Democratic Party, will be banned by the Turkish government. And we also see now that CHP, who's the Cumhuriyet Halk Partisi, who's it's like the Social Democratic Party, the Socialists. His president is now also being threatened by put in prison, and that all has to do with the fact that people in parliament lost their immunity due to a change in law. So as I said, it will depend by the moment of vote who will still be in parliament.
How has Erdogan and the government reacted to the protests that are happening? How has the response been?
At this point, there are several protests going on. You also have the Boğaziçi University. I don't know if you know that protest.
No,
you have the same. You have simultaneously a big student protest. Boğaziçi University is where Erdogan nominated a dean at his preference. It's homophobic, and since February, students are protesting. and they are treated as terrorists. Everyone who goes on the street is a terrorist. So he
Are they met with
reacts-
police violence? Are they?
Police already showed up, not every time, but they already did. People already have been arrested, but so far, concerning the women's demonstration, I didn't hear of any arrestations yet. It is possible, but not. Turkey is so big, and we don't have every.
You don't know what's happening in every
Everywhere,
place.
exactly,
Yeah.
yes. And also there is so much offer in press in Turkey. It's really difficult to know which one to follow and which one not.
Okay. Let's look at the European context, because you said Erdogan, when he first came to power, had this vision of growing closer to Europe as well. So Erdogan is not the only one in opposition to this treaty. In May 2020, the National Assembly of Hungary called on their government to stop implementing the treaty and to lobby the EU to do the same. And in July 2020, the Polish Minister of Justice declared he will begin the formal process of withdrawal as well. Why are we seeing so much opposition to this treaty? Why is there such a backlash against this specific document now in the broader European context?
Yeah. I think that listeners should realize, but you already stated it yourself, it's not a Turkish problem, it's a worldwide problem. Everywhere we see right-wing parties and conservative parties rise. Poland, Bulgaria, but also countries as the Netherlands, Belgium, Flanders, we have Vlaams Belang, and even countries like Brazil, where we have Bolsonaro. And very typical, in every right-wing party, the first type of rights that they attack are women's rights, LGBTQI rights, and asylum and migration migrants' rights. So they are always under attack, and for me personal, of course, I'm a human rights activist. I always see this dynamics with the fact that we blame other groups when it goes bad socially, economically.
Yeah, scapegoating certain
Yeah, exactly.
groups and
So it's very easy to say you don't have a job because there are too many migrants. So, and especially when it comes to women's rights and LGBTQI rights, they always claim that it disrupts the structure, the solid structure of how society should be. And for me, it's just a way to draw attention, to withdraw the attention from the real problems in society. Now, when it comes to Europe, my personal opinion is that for a long time now, Europe has stepped too far away from what it's intended to be. Europe was intended to be the biggest and most successful post-Second World War peace project. And it has done it. But it has done it by seeing the union as a big trade agreement. So an economical union, a trade union, where human rights are not always on top of the agenda.
Do you think the focus has shifted too much to the economical part of it, and there has been the human rights and peace project has been forgotten a little bit, or at least put secondary?
It's more put. It's for me. It's put secondary. Yeah.
When these announcements were made in Bulgaria and Poland, women were outraged in those countries as well. And they took to the streets, just like what happened in Turkey. In Warsaw, we saw hundreds of people demonstrate against the announcement of the withdrawal. Have you had contact with these groups? Are they all in contact with each other? Do you work together? Is there some coordination or changing of information, or does it happen through social media?
Not yet, we hope. So we deliberately chose deliberately opted for an English name because we thought with ourselves, you know what, we are here in the center of the European institutions, and it would be so great because in Belgium, it's when the meetings are happening, like you have the European Commission, you have the European Parliament, you have the European Council, you have the Council of Europe, so everything is here. And we thought, well, we cannot move always all those women to Brussels,
yes.
but we could create a platform where other diaspora women could join us.
Yes.
So we hope in the future to work together with the diaspora women of Poland, from whom we then expect that they will bring the information from Poland. So it
that
will
way
be
building a network.
Exactly. So I think everyone, depending on their second nationality, should bring the information to the platform. So it will be difficult for us to reach out to Poland itself or to Bulgaria itself, but I'm sure, and we really hope, that they will contact us to join the platform so we can work together.
Are you initiating contact and coordination with these diaspora groups in Belgium then?
Not yet, because we are also brainstorming. This is the first time that we do it. This is the first time that we have, like I said, Turkish and Kurdish and feminists working together. So we are searching. It's a dynamic. It's growing. And beside of that, we all have a full-time job. So we're like doing meetings in the evening and try to keep up with social media. But we have a way that they can contact us, and that's through social media.
Okay, and you said this is not even a women's rights issue in Europe. This is a global human rights issue. Are you also planning on looking for diaspora in, for example, Brazil and other countries around the world?
No, we would like to have, for example, the Brazilian community in Belgium join.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I phrased that badly. But are you also hoping to have contact with the Brazilian community?
Yes, we hope that. Well, we should really think of a more strategical communication plan. But we will hope at one point that they will find us. We are organizing more actions, and hopefully it will draw their attention to look us up and to send us an email like you did for the podcast.
How have the other European countries, Belgium, France, Germany, how have they reacted to this withdrawal from Turkey? How has the larger European community reacted to it?
In several countries, like in the Netherlands and Germany as well, and France, we have seen women also protesting, taking over the street. So worldwide, there's a European protest from the diaspora, and it's really good. They're still coming together like almost every week in several countries, and I think it encourages the women in Turkey to go on. But because people must realize that he announced to withdraw, but the final decision will be on the 1st of July. So this is the moment where we can make noise and really draw attention from the state members of the European Union, because they all condemned the withdrawal. But as you have seen, von der Leyen and Michel, they had a meeting with Erdogan last week. And so it's not enough just to do a press release or to do a tweet on Twitter. There has to be concrete actions. But when we look at Europe, like I said, Europe has been acting way too long as economical or trade agreement, and not as a peace project. And it's too pity, because the way Turkey is acting, it's creating instability, and a stable Turkey should be a European top priority. We should lead the example. But what is reality is that when the state members finally sit at a table with Erdogan, they have very specific objectives. I think their main goal is keeping that migrant deal alive.
Yeah, that's the deal in which Turkey stops migrants from the Middle East trying to get into the Schengen area and into the European Union.
But not only that, like they always call it a positive agenda, but they all always also talk about defense, about fighting terrorism, right? About managing these migration flows, and about defense and mobility. And when you hear me state all of the subjects that are on the table, these are always more liberal and right-wing subjects. So what Europe can concretely do, and not only against Turkey, but also against European countries who wants to withdraw, I think it should be. I think respecting treaties and human rights should be. How do you say that? An obligation. You cannot be part of the biggest peace project if you're not supporting human rights.
Which has also been a conflict with Hungary and Poland. There was the idea, or at least the debate, whether or not we should link the financing of European subsidies and European investments to human rights and the rule of law, some basic European principles, to which Hungary and Poland were very defensive.
Yeah, you see that now also you have this post-COVID-19 European budget. It's really a couple of billions, and they have a short-term strategy, but also a long-term strategy beyond 2024. And there you see that they have included respecting women's rights and working around gender equality.
So is that a move in the right direction? Is that an example of it going at least a little bit towards that peace project, or?
I think it's we should not be too naive. A text is always a compromise between 28 member states, and so the way it's formulated, it gives a room to foresee really spending budget from the post-COVID-19 also on women's rights and working on gender equality. Because we are talking about a treaty that's against violence on women and domestic violence, and numbers prove that domestic violence, because of the lockdown and the COVID-19 crisis, rose all around the world. So it's really, we cannot ignore it anymore. So just when those numbers are rising, and when Europe is trying to help women in the Union by combining funds with human rights, we have unfortunately member states who want to
withdraw and take a step out of the agreement. Because some member states don't want to ratify the agreement, the EU can't ratify it as a whole. Does that impact the treaty in any way, since individual states can still adopt it or not?
I think there are two things that should be clear for the listener. I think that the first one I explained, individually, country has to ratify a treaty. That means translated into national law. Second is that, of course, if the ratification would have been possible on European level, that would have been amazing, because we also have this European Institute of Gender Equality. Then we could ask them to develop a methodology to register, to prevention, so we can really make European standards.
It would have bolstered the effort, it would have strengthened it by pulling together resources.
But it is not done, and I don't think technically that if it's easy to done. But I think at this point it would also be risky, because we already have the UK who has withdrawn from the European Union, and I think they would be scared that this could open the door in the end of the European Union.
Mentioning the UK, I didn't ask you in the questions, but the UK also hasn't ratified the treaty. That's not a country we would, when we hear the UK, we always group them in with these developed and progressive countries. But that's a strange thing, no? That the UK didn't ratify a treaty on women's rights.
Yeah, but even UK has become more right-wing.
Mm-hmm.
So it was now Boris Johnson is head of state, and UK has always been a special country. Like they always want to be in, but they want to show we're out.
They always need an exception to the rule. Yes.
So it's not to criticize, because I don't know people from the United Kingdom well enough to have a judgment or an opinion about it. But there is this, they are like literally on their island.
Mm-hmm, yeah, they always separate themselves to a certain degree.
But then it's technically possible, but for that I don't know the laws enough of the country. I can imagine that some countries on some matters of the treaty were already advanced, and some not even. But this is just a minimum. A treaty is a minimum standard what we want everyone to apply.
Let's talk about the link with the LGBTQI plus community, because Erdogan, in his speech or in his explanation for withdrawing from the treaty, blamed the LGBTQI plus community, saying that they hijacked the treaty in an attempt to normalize homosexuality. Bulgaria never ratified the treaty because it promotes non-biological definitions of gender, or so it says. And Slovakia also rejected the treaty because of its clauses concerning LGBT rights. Those are, in our opinion, irrational fears of bigots, but it does raise an important question. How important is this treaty for the rights of the LGBTQI plus community?
Yeah. First of all, we need to say what the convention does not say. It doesn't introduce a third gender. It doesn't talk about same-sex marriage, and the spirit of the treaty when it talks about gender is not to replace the word women or men. But opponents of the convention, they complain because the treaty says that everyone should get protection against discrimination, no matter what the gender. And they claim that word that could be interpreted as opening the doors to loosen up, to have more homosexuals, and this finally will lead to gay marriage. From my personal point of view, utterly
bizarre to be afraid of that, but
you don't think that the treaty itself is just about women, and the way they attack it is it's trying to also do homosexuality and do LGBTQ rights?
No, the treaty is not only about women. The treaty is also about asylum seekers, migrants, and it's just It also talks about protecting men against violence. So it's just about gender, and of course, what they wanted to say is everyone, like in the Constitution is written that everyone is equal, regard their sex, sexual orientation, religion, so on. So treaties handle with the same philosophy. Everyone has the right to be protected against violence and domestic violence and discrimination.
Yeah.
So that is, for us, such a logic thing. But since we have conservatism rising, we have people putting that into question. Because their ideal world is that there are two genders, men and women, and the rest does not exist.
The wording in the treaty is as followed. The definition of gender it uses is as followed. For the purpose of the convention, gender is defined in Article 3C as the socially constructed roles, behaviors, activities, and attributes that a given society considers appropriate for women and men. So it doesn't mention, like you said, a third gender. It's actually, in maybe the standards of other people, very conservative because it maintains men and women as a thing. So then why this?
And
is it another?
I mean, a lesbian is a woman who likes women, and a homosexual is a man who likes men. But it doesn't give space to non-binary persons, for example. But I think because non-binary is that we discuss it now more, and the treaty is almost 10 years old.
Yeah.
So I don't think the definition of non-binary was the acceptance of non-binary was not so active. It was not so high on the political agenda 10 years ago. Because I think if it would have been now, it would have been definitely in it.
But I've heard, like, if we want to go with the criticism and assume it's in good faith, when they say it's also allowing the door for homosexuality, it's allowing the door for queerness, and that's scary. I've heard the criticism where they say that the treaty is trying to do too much, that it should have been focused on protection from violence, and the spirit of it is protection against discrimination for women, men, and the inclusion of this ideal utopia where everyone is equal and protected is a bit too much. It's trying to do too much. Would you agree we want to get things moving. Do you agree that the treaty was doing too much, was trying to do too much? It should have been focused on a little thing like women's rights instead of trying to do LGBT?
No, not at all. Or else I wouldn't have mentioned non-binary persons.
Like if we're arguing with them and they're always like, but this will also allow for gay marriage and that we don't want. We want to protect women. That's all we want.
But that's the thing. It doesn't open the door to gay marriage.
Yes,
so it's their interpretation. And I think to answer to your question, at one point, people are arguing subjectively with their own frame window. You cannot say anything to that. You cannot say you're wrong or you're right. Some debates
are not in good faith. Yeah,
that sounds great, but I don't know what it means.
It means that when they try to do that debate, when they do that point, they don't actually want to argue with you. They just want you to waste your time. They just want you to, we just don't agree with you, and we're gonna say it's because of this. But we actually don't agree with the whole thing. And we're not gonna waste time getting into misinterpretations and saying that...
But it's not only misinterpretation. I know that a lot of people, and everywhere, also when you go here to the countryside, to West Vlaanderen, there's still a lot of skepticism towards LGBTQI. And it's, like I said, it's the migrant who steals your job. Well, it's the LGBTQI community who attacks our fundamental structure of society. So it's just easy to blame someone. So
it's another example of scapegoating.
Yes, and hoe zeg je dat? I think it's a tactic to get support. It's a good idea that we withdraw from this convention, because we know it's a taboo. So strategically, it's so good to mention LGBTQI, and then the support for the withdrawal will grow.
And that's exactly what I meant.
It's not a goal in itself. It's a way to achieve. Yeah, it's a tactic.
Yeah, of course, you have always conservative people who think that LGBTQI should not be given space in public areas, literally. But I also have the impression, it's my personal opinion, that people use it because they know it's still taboos in some societies.
And has there been a coordinated effort between the traditionally feminist organizations and the LGBTQI plus groups in the protests, for example? Are they on the streets together?
Like I said, I don't have all the information, but when you look at for example, there was always a 8th March Mars during International Women's Day. In Istanbul, it's a tradition, and it's always mixed. It's always also with the LGBTQI community. So in big cities, I don't know if it's coordinated, but it's almost naturally. Of course, when you go to rural areas, the situation is different.
Yeah. Are you guys planning on potentially also reaching out to the LGBTQI plus groups in Belgium?
Like for now, we are symbolically always drawing the rainbow flag on our cheeks. The thing is, we are now focusing on Turkey, and there's a difference in living, or we're going to say our homosexuality in European cultures as in cultures from the Middle East or Maghreb or Africa. So here it's a very focused on coming out. European countries are like coming out, and that's what the pride is about. You come out, you show. Well, in our cultural structures, we are more on coming in. We are more on, you see a lot that a lot of people from the LGBTQI don't want to embarrass their family, or they don't want to lose their family, and family bond is very important. Also, or they never come out, or they leave, they move. So I would wish that I could have an organization that I can say, oh, these are the LGBTQI, all from Turkish or Kurdish descendants. Let's call them and let's join them. But I'm afraid that, but first of all, it's not organized, and I'm afraid that a lot of them are still on the coming in and not on the coming out. So I don't know if they would join us, but for me, they are more than welcome.
Okay.
But it's a different concept. But maybe Kenan can say more about that.
Coming from the Middle East, it's always a tough subject. I personally think we don't need to give up and say that we should come in instead of come out.
Me, by the way, as well, but for now they are scared, let's be honest.
And of course I get it. I get that everybody is scared, and I have the privilege of living here. I'm not afraid for my life. I'm not worried about anybody who would try to kill me or throw me off a roof. So yeah, to be fair, I'm not really familiar with the situation in Turkey. I've been to Istanbul, and I've seen the progressive part of Istanbul, and I've seen the conservative part of Istanbul, and it's a very double
different
city.
World,
yeah. So I'm assuming that there are some organizations in Istanbul where they are very out.
Yes.
And these people, if they already exist, then I think it's a good idea to stay like that. Go in one direction of coming out and being proud of it instead of trying to integrate within society, because the idea of integration has always been a bit too...
Assimilation, eh?
Yes.
Yes.
And that I personally don't agree with, but that's just me.
I forgot her name, but the head of the LGBTQI was murdered, like a couple of years ago in Istanbul. She was a trans woman, and she was just brutally murdered. So
I've heard.
Yes. So really, really sad.
It's very, very sad, but that doesn't mean...
But so, to answer, I wish I could join them, but I don't know how to reach them. So, and we are working on it.
Give your message out there, put your emails out there. Also, like at the end of the episode, we'll give you the chance to promote whatever social media, how people can contact you, how can they support your cause, and hopefully...
Just send them. It really starts with sending mails to organizations we have found, and if they don't react, it's there.
And I also talked with a friend a couple of days ago, and she taught me really something interesting. Something I already felt, but she knew how to explain it. And she said to me, cultures based on Christian tradition, they work really on the guilt. And guilt is an individual feeling. It's an individual process where you go through. Where cultures based on Muslim background, they are based on shame. And shame is a collective feeling.
By society.
So it's a group feeling. So, and that can maybe explain, that analyze can maybe explain why one society is more going for coming out, and why one society is still not there in the coming out and still is in the coming in. Because it's not individually, it's always collectively organized.
It's the group that has to transcend that.
Of course, I would also like to point out that in a country where you're not worried about war, you're not worried about food, you're not worried about starvation, it's much easier to focus on human rights in the sense of now we're here. Now in the triangle of needs, we've covered food, we've covered water, we've covered electricity, we've covered peace and not fearing for your life, and then we reach the point where we also want to support gay marriage and we want to support everyone. So yeah, coming from Syria, I would say we're still on the bottom of the pyramid. So let's get back to the interview.
Yeah.
We got a bit off topic, but that's okay.
No, but it's good.
it's fine.
Yeah.
The entire point of our channel is to get people to... Yes, going back to the Istanbul Convention. Was something going off? Okay.
Maybe it's my phone. Yeah. But we're almost through as of
Okay. Let's look at what people actually can do, because let's not get stuck in a reactionary sense of reacting to what these strongmen are doing in Europe. Let's also consider maybe first as an introduction what this can be. In your opinion, if you could dream, what could the Istanbul Convention be? What could it lead to?
In a utopian world.
Yes,
in a utopian, or in the best sense. What would be the best case scenario?
Well, since it obliges since it obliges countries who signed the treaty and ratify it, is to create awareness, especially to boys and men, what their role is in this process. So in the utopian way, it smacks down patriarchy.
Amazing.
And obviously in this best case scenario.
But it has the tool to do it. Since you're obliged to do prevention campaigns and raise awareness and accepting that it exists, violence and domestic violence against women, and that men and boys are the key role in changing that, that's for me smacking down patriarchy.
Amazing. We will use that as the beginning of the entire interview.
By the way, we only have 19 minutes of recording as battery.
Yeah, but we
we're almost done.
Yeah, almost done.
To smash down the patriarchy. Because international treaties might sometimes feel a bit over our heads. It's a big thing by heads of state. What can people and organizations do to support the Istanbul Convention?
Well, first of all, organizations should inform people of what the convention is about and its importance, because I made a video a couple of weeks ago, but really basically just talking about the main topics of the conventions, like the prosecution, protecting and prevention. And I had a lot of compliments stating, wow, thank you. I know that the convention is important, but actually I don't know why. It's the first time I know a little bit more about what's in the convention. So I know it's a very dry text. So people know that there's an Istanbul Convention, but actually they don't know what it's about. They don't know why it's important, why it's better than other treaties in stopping violence against women. And organizations should start to inform people on that. And once the people are informed, because the more you educate the people, the more people will go out on protest when their country decides to withdraw of the treaty.
So educate your members and tell everyone about why it is important. Maybe use your video in the process.
And once they are informed, what do you think the common listener should be able to do to help? Like, is there a direct way to concretely help?
Well, I'm an activist and I'm someone from the field, so I'm someone who believes in protesting. But now with the corona measures, it's a little bit difficult. But I would say follow up the news. If you really want to help, contact women's organizations from which countries have contact women's organizations.
In countries that have withdrawn or
to contact women organizations here in Belgium from the diaspora and ask them, we heard your country is withdrawing, is there something that we can do specifically? And maybe it's just writing articles about it, going protesting on the street, showing solidarity with the women in those countries, in Poland and Bulgaria and in Turkey. So I think there is not one call for action. Everyone should think about what him or her talent is, and according to that, join,
contribute what you can.
Yeah.
And don't forget to, if I would interject here, don't forget that this whole thing is about not just contributing to political movements or activists. It's also about just teach your sons, educate them about sexual harassment, acknowledge it even if it's difficult, and try not to protect your daughters but to educate yourselves.
Yeah, but that's the thing of the treaty. It's the state's obligation.
Yes.
When it comes to children, most of the time they spend at school in the educational system.
Yes.
So it's really the head of states who have the power to change and shift minds, because they rule over the educational system of a country.
Agreed,
the schools should have a patriarchy talk with the...
Definitely, but that's why you develop campaigns.
Yes. But if the campaigns aren't available, there's always the parental culture, the family culture. You can always
But the thing is, we learn by example.
We do.
And
also be a good example, don't be...
Yes, and so we have this example from the last preceding generation. So it was even more patriarchal than now. So it's already amazing that luckily a lot of people respect what's in the treaty. So that means a lot of people already educated themselves. They had a mind shift. But you cannot do it on yourself.
Of course not.
You need and
societal shift.
Yeah, exactly. And for that you need a state that believes it and that acknowledges that there is a problem. Because withdrawing from the treaty is actually, it's a slap in the face of millions of women in Turkey and the LGBTQI and young girls, because it's actually saying it doesn't exist.
What can people and organizations do to support you, especially the Belgian ones and the diaspora? What can they do to help save Istanbul Convention?
Well, we are organizing more actions and protests in the coming weeks. Like next week, the 24th, we have action in the city center of Brussels, but it's to create awareness in the public opinion. Then the 11th of May, we're planning something big, because then it will be 10 years Istanbul Convention, and then but it also depends on the restrictions, the corona measurement restrictions, but we will have a good bond with the police, and we are reflecting on what we can do, but then we will do really a call for action to join us all. And then, since the actual withdrawal of Turkey will be the 1st of July, we are now brainstorming over the fact if we should do an action week the last week of June.
Okay, that sounds amazing. I see you also have some information on the treaty itself.
Yes.
Maybe we can put that in the description of the video, or a link to a document.
Yes, I will have to see where I put it, but this is a really good document because it's about what is it about and what is in it and what is especially not in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there is your video, of course, in which you explain what the treaty is.
Yeah, that you can find on. So we have a Facebook page called Save Istanbul Convention. And then we are also going online on Twitter this weekend and Instagram with Save Istanbul Convention BE.
Okay.
So people can follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, and follow us on Facebook.
And we'll also link all of these social media links in our description.
Thank you.
That's no problem. Thank you for coming and talking with us.
You're welcome.
It's a very important treaty, and it hasn't nearly gotten the attention it should have gotten so far. But let's hope we can change that.
Thank you very much for having me as your guest.